Okay, welcome back to Frag Frigs with Microphone Fridays. I'm your intrepid narrator, Frageth, and today we're going to be frigging around with a new microphone, which isn't what I'm using right this second, because I need to do some tweaks to its audio levels, because they are way too quiet, and I need to fix that. So give me one sec here. Where's Advanced Audio Properties? There it is. I-dee-da-dee-da-dee-dum. All right, we're going to roughly double that. Put that at like 7.5 dB. Whoops, not 75. Hello. Okay, perfect. Okay, and we'll see how that goes. Uh, it was way too quiet. The audio quality is definitely better, but we're getting there. Anyway, we're going to be reading more stories from Beyond the Rift by Peter Watts. We're going to be doing, first story will be The Second Coming of Jasmine Fitzgerald, and the second one will be A Word for Heathens. Where I get to ham it up. It's a bit too edgy. It's pretty edgy. How long is the one after that? The one after that's pretty short. We might throw that in there for a bonus. Put in a bookmark there real quick. Okay, so for this I will probably, come on, don't lose your page. There it is. Yo, 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 yo. Okay, let's see if the other microphone's working. You know, it isn't. Come on. That's the problem. Did I? Hmm. Give me a sec. There it is. Okay, sorry about that. How loud is that gonna be? Is that gonna be too loud? Es posible. There's an option on here for more directionality, but I can't really remember which one it's supposed to be. So we'll fake it. Alright, give me one sec here. Wrong button. Right button. The Second Coming of Jasmine Fitzgerald by Peter Watts. What's wrong with this picture? Not much at first glance. Blood pools in a pattern entirely consistent with the location of the victim. No conspicuous arterial spray, the butcheries all abdominal, more spilled than spurted. No slogans either. Nobody scrawled Helter Skelter, or Satan is Lord, or even Elvis Lives on any of the walls.
It's just another mess in another kitchen in another one-bedroom apartment, already overcrowded with the piecemeal accumulation of 2 lives. One life's all that's left now, a thrashing, gory creature screaming her mantra over and over as the police wrestle her away. I have to save him! I have to save him! I have to save him! More evidence, not that the assembled cops need it, of why domestic calls absolutely suck. She hasn't saved him. By now, it's obvious that no one can. He lies in a pool of his own insides, blood and lymph spreading across the cracks between the linoleum tiles, crisscrossing, a convenient clotting grid drawing itself across the crime scene. Every now and then, a red bubble grows and breaks on his lips. Anyone who happens to notice this pretends not to. The weapon? Right here. Run-of-the-mill steak knife, slick with blood and coagulating fingerprints, lying exactly where she dropped it. The only thing that's missing is a motive. They were a quiet couple, the neighbors say. He was sick, he'd been sick for months. They never went out much. There was no history of violence. They loved each other deeply. Maybe she was sick, too. Maybe she was following orders from some tumor in her brain. Or maybe it was a botched alien abduction, gray-skinned creatures from Zeta 2 Reticuli framing an innocent bystander for their own incompetence. Maybe it's a mass hallucination. Maybe it isn't really happening at all. Maybe it's an act of God.
They got to her early. This is one of the advantages of killing someone during office hours. They've taken samples, scraped residue from clothes and skin on the off chance that anyone might question whose blood she was wearing. They've searched the apartment, questioned neighbors and relatives, established superficial details of identity. Jasmine Fitzgerald, 24-year-old Caucasian brunette, doctoral candidate. In global general relativity, whatever the fuck that is, they've stripped her down, cleaned her up, bounced her off a judge into interview room 1, forensic psychiatric support services. They've put someone in there with her. Hello, Miss Fitzgerald. I'm Dr. Thomas. My first name's Miles, if you prefer. She stares at him. Miles it is. Oh, sorry. Miles it is. She seems calm, but the tracks of recent tears still show on her face. I guess you're supposed to decide whether I'm crazy. Whether you're fit to stand trial, yes. I should tell you right off that nothing you say to me is necessarily confidential. Do you understand? She nods. Thomas sits down across from her. What would you like me to call you? Napoleon, Mohammed, Jesus Christ. Her lips twitch, the faintest smile gone in an instant. Sorry, just kidding. Jazz is fine. Are you doing okay in here? Are they treating you all right? She snorts. They're treating me pretty damn well, considering the kind of monster they think I am. A pause, then, I'm not, you know. A monster? Crazy. I've I've just recently undergone a paradigm shift, you know? The whole world looks different, and my head's there, but sometimes my gut, I mean, it's so hard to feel differently about things. Tell me about this paradigm shift, Thomas suggests. He makes it a point not to take notes. He doesn't even have a notepad. Not that it matters. The microcassette recorder in his blazer has very sensitive ears. Things make sense now, she says. They never did before, I think. Oh, that's a period, not a comma. They never did before. I think, for the first time in my life, I'm actually happy. She smiles again, for longer this time. Long enough for Thomas to marvel at how genuine it seems. You weren't very happy when you first came here, he says gently. They say you were very upset. Yeah. She nods seriously. It's tough enough to do that shit to yourself, you know, but to risk someone else, someone you really care about. She wipes at one eye. He was dying for over a year, did you know that? Each day he'd hurt a little more. You could almost see it spreading through him, like some sort of leaf going brown. Or maybe it was the chemo. Or maybe that was the chemo. Never could decide which was worse. She shakes her head. At least that's over now. Is that why you did it? To end his suffering? Thomas doubts it. Mercy killers don't generally disembowel their beneficiaries. Still, he asks. She answers, "Of course I fucked up. I only ended up making things worse." She clasped her hands in front of her. "I miss him already. Isn't that crazy? It only happened a few hours ago, and I know it's no big deal, but I still miss him. That head-heart thing again." "You say you fucked up," Thomas says. She takes a deep breath, nods. "Big time." "Tell me about that." "I don't know shit about debugging. I thought I did, but when you're dealing with organics, all I really did was go in and mess randomly with the code. You make a mess of everything unless you know exactly what you're doing. That's what I'm working on now." "Debugging?" "That's what I call it. There's no real word for it yet." "Oh, yes, there is." Aloud. "Go on." Jasmine Fitzgerald sighs, her eyes closed. "I don't expect you to believe this under the circumstances, but I really loved him. No, I love him." Her breath comes out in a soft snort, a whispered laugh. There I go again, the bloody past tense. "Tell me about debugging." "I don't think you're up for it, Miles. I don't even think you're all that interested." Her eyes open, point directly at him. "But for the record, Stu was dying. I tried to save him. I failed. Next time I'll do better, and better still the time after that, and eventually I'll get it right." "And what happens then?" Thomas says. "Through your eyes or mine?" "Yours." I repair the glitches in the string. Or, if it's easier, I replicate an undamaged version of the subroutine and insert it back into the main loop. Same difference." "Uh-huh. And what would I see?" She shrugs. "Stu rising from the dead."
What's wrong with this picture? Spread out across the table, the mind of Jasmine Fitzgerald winks back from pages of standardized questions. Somewhere in here, presumably, is a monster. These are the tools used to dissect human psyches: the WAIS, the MMPI, the PDI. Hammers, all of them. Blunt chisels posing as microtomes. Microtomies? A copy of DSM-4 sits off to one side, a fat paperback volume of symptoms and pathologies, a matrix of pigeonholes. Perhaps Fitzgerald fits into one of them. Intermittent explosive, maybe? Battered woman? Garden variety sociopath? The test results are inconclusive. It's as though she's laughing up from the page at him. True or false? I sometimes hear voices that no one else hears. False, she's checked. I have been feeling unusually depressed lately. False. Sometimes I get so angry I feel like hitting something. True, and a handwritten note in the margin. Hey, doesn't everyone? There are snares sprinkled throughout these tests, linked questions designed to catch liars in subtle traps of self-contradiction. Jasmine Fitzgerald has avoided them all. Is she unusually honest? Is she too smart for the tests? There doesn't seem to be anything here that... Wait a second. Who was Louis Pasteur? Asks the WAIS, trying to get a handle on educational background. A virus, Fitzgerald said. Back up the list. Here's another one on the previous page. Who was Winston Churchill? And again, a virus. And 15 questions before that, who was Florence Nightingale? A famous nurse, Fitzgerald responded to that one, and her responses to all previous questions on historical personalities are unremarkably correct. But everyone after Nightingale is a virus. Killing a virus is no sin. You can do it with an utterly clear conscience. Maybe she's redefining the nature of her act. Maybe that's how she manages to live with herself these days. Just as well. That raising the dead shtick didn't cut any ice at all.
She's slumped across the table when he enters, her head resting on folded arms. Thomas clears his throat. Jasmine. No response. He reaches out, touches her lightly on the shoulder. Her head comes up, a fluid motion containing no hint of grogginess. She settles back into her chair and smiles. Welcome back. So, am I crazy or what? Thomas smiles back and sits down across from her. We try to avoid prejudicial terms. Hey, I can take it. I'm not prone to tantrums. A picture flashes across the front of his mind. Beloved husband, entrails spread-eagled like butterfly wings against a linoleum grid. Of course not. No tantrums for you. We need a whole new word to describe what it is you do. Debugging, wasn't it? I was going over your test results, he begins. Did I pass? It's not that kind of test, but I was intrigued by some of your answers. She purses her lips. Good. Tell me about viruses. That sunny smile again. Sure. Mutable information strings that can't replicate without hijacking external source code. Go on. Ever hear of Core Wars? No. Back in the early 80s, some guys got together and wrote a bunch of self-replicating computer programs. The idea was to put them into the same block of memory and have them compete for space. They all had their own little tricks for self-defense and reproduction, and, of course, eating the competition. Oh, you mean computer viruses, Thomas says. Actually, before all that. Fitzgerald pauses a moment, cocks her head to one side. You ever wonder what it might be like to be one of those little programs? Running around, laying eggs and dropping logic bombs and interacting with other viruses? Thomas shrugs. I never even knew about them until now. Why? Do you? No, she says. Not anymore. Go on. Her expression changes. You know, talking to you is a bit like talking to a program. All you ever say is, go on, and tell me more, and, I mean, Jesus, Miles, they wrote therapy programs back in the 60s that had more range than you do. In BASIC, even. Register an opinion, for Christ's sake. It's just a technique, Jazz. I'm not here to get into a debate with you, as interesting as that might be. I'm trying to assess your fitness to stand trial. My opinions aren't really at issue. She sighs and sags. I know. I'm sorry. I know you're not here to keep me entertained, but I'm used to being able to. I mean, Stuart would always be so. Oh, God, I miss him so much. She admits, her eyes shining and unhappy. She's a killer, he tells himself. Don't let her suck you in. Just assess her. That's all you have to do. Don't start liking her, for Christ's sake. That's understandable, Thomas says. She snorts. Bullshit. You don't understand at all. You know what he did the first time he went in for chemo? I was studying for my comps, and he stole my textbooks. Why would he do that? Because he knew I wasn't studying at home. I was a complete wreck. And when I came to see him at the hospital, he pulls these bloody books out from under his bed and starts quizzing me on Dirac and the Bekenstein bound. He was dying, and all he wanted to do was help me prepare for some stupid test. I'd do anything for him. Well, Thomas doesn't say. You certainly did more than most. I can't wait to see him again, she adds, almost as an afterthought. When will that be, Jazz? When do you think? She looks at him, and the sorrow and despair he thought he saw in those eyes is suddenly nowhere to be seen. Most people, if they said that, would be talking about the afterlife. She favors him with a sad little smile. This is the afterlife, Miles. This is heaven, and hell, and nirvana. Whatever we choose to make it. Right here. Yes, Thomas says after a moment. Of course. Her disappointment in him hangs there like an accusation. You don't believe in God, do you? She asks at last. Do you? He ricochets. Didn't used to. Turns out there's clues, though. Proof, even. Such as? The mass of the top quark, the width of the Higgs boson. You can't read them any other way when you know what you're looking for. Know anything about quantum physics, Miles? He shakes his head. Not really. Nothing really exists, not down at the subatomic level. It's all just probability waves. Until someone looks at it, that is. Then the wave collapses and you get what we call reality. But it can't happen without an observer to get things started. Thomas squints, trying to squeeze some sort of insight into his brain. So if we weren't here looking at this table, it wouldn't exist? Fitzgerald nods. More or less. That smile peeks around the corner of her mouth for a second. He tries to lure it back. So God's the observer, is that what you're saying? God watches all the atoms so the universe can exist? I never thought about it that way before. The smile morphs into a frown of concentration. More metaphoric than mathematical, but it's a cool idea. Was God watching you yesterday? She looks up, distracted. Huh? Does it communicate with you? Her face goes completely expressionless. Does God tell me to do things, you mean? Did God tell me to carve up stew, like... Her breath hisses out between her teeth. No, Miles, I don't hear voices. Charlie Manson doesn't come to me in my dreams and whisper sweet nothings. I answered all those questions on your test already, so give me a fucking break, okay? He holds up his hands, placating. That's not what I meant, Jasmine. Liar. I'm sorry if that's how it sounded. It's just, God, quantum mechanics. It's a lot to swallow at once, It's mind-blowing. She watches him through guarded eyes. Yeah, I guess it can be. I forget sometimes. She relaxes a fraction. But it's all true. The math is inevitable. You can change the nature of reality just by looking at it. You're right. It's mind-blowing. But only at the subatomic level, right? You're not really saying we could make this table disappear just by ignoring it, are you? Her eye flickers to a spot just to the right and behind him, about where the door should be. Well, no, she says at last. Not without a lot of practice.
What's wrong with this picture? Besides the obvious, of course. Besides the vertical incision running from sternum to approximately 2 centimeters below the navel, penetrating the abdominal musculature and extending through into the visceral column. Coelom, sorry. Beyond the serrations along its edge, which suggest the use of some sort of blade. Not, evidently, a very sharp one. No, we're getting ahead of ourselves here. The coroner's art is nothing if not systematic. Very well, then. Caucasian male, mid-20s. External morphometrics previously noted. Hair loss and bruising consistent with chemotherapeutic toxicity. Right index and ring fingernails missing. Same notation. The deceased was one sick puppy at time of demise, sickened by the disease, poisoned by the cure. And just when you thought things couldn't get any worse, down and in. The wound swallows the coroner's rubberized hands like some huge torn vagina, its labia clotted and crystallized. The usual viscera glisten inside, repackaged by medics at the site who had to reel in all loose ends for transport. Perhaps evidence was lost in the process. Perhaps the killer had arranged the entrails in some significant pattern. Perhaps the arrangement of the GI tract spelled out some clue or unholy name. No matter, they took pictures of everything. Mesentery stretches like thin latex, binding loops of intestine one to the other. A bit too tightly, in fact. There appear to be fistulas of some sort scattered along the lower ilium. Loops seem fused together at several spots. What could have caused that? Nothing comes to mind. Note it, record it, take a sample for detailed histological analysis. Move on. The scalpel passes through the tract as easily as through overcooked pasta. Stringy bile and pre-fecal lumps slump tiredly into a collecting dish. Something bulges behind them from the dorsal wall. Something shines white as bone where no bone should be. Slice, resect. There. A mass of some kind covering the right kidney, approximately 15 centimeters by 10, extending down to the bladder. Quite heterogeneous. It's got some sort of lumps in it. A tumor? Is this what Stuart McLennan's doctors were dueling with when they pumped him full of poison? It doesn't look like any tumor the coroner's seen. For one thing, and this is really kind of strange, it's looking back at him. His desk is absolutely Spartan. Not a shred of paper out of place. Not a shred of paper even in evidence, actually. The surface is as featureless as a Kubrick monolith, except for the Sun workstation positioned dead center and a rack of CDs angled off to the left.
"I thought she looked familiar," he said, "when I saw the papers. Didn't know quite where to place her, though."
Jasmine Fitzgerald's graduate supervisor.
"I guess you've got a lot of students," Thomas suggests.
"Yes."
He leans forward, begins tapping at the workstation keyboard.
"I've yet to meet all of them, actually. One or two in Europe I correspond with exclusively over the net. I hope to meet them this summer in Bern. Ah, yes, here she is. Doesn't look anything like the media picture."
"She doesn't live in Europe, Dr. Russell."
"No, right here. Did her field work at CERN, though. Damn hard getting anything done here since the super collider fell through. Ah,
"What?"
she's on leave. I remember her now. She put her thesis on hold about a year and a half ago. Illness in the family, as I recall."
Russell stares at the monitor. Something he sees there seems to sink in all at once.
"She killed her husband? She killed him?"
Thomas nods.
"My God."
Russell shakes his head.
"She didn't seem the type. She always seemed so, well, so cheery."
"She still does, sometimes."
"My God," he repeats. "And how can I help you?"
"She's suffering from some very elaborate delusions. She couches them in a lot of technical terminology I don't understand. I mean, for all I know, she could actually be making sense. No, scratch that. She can't be, but I don't have the background to really understand her. Well, claims."
"What sort of claims?"
"For one thing, she keeps talking about bringing her husband back from the dead."
"I see."
"You don't seem surprised."
"Should I be? You said she was delusional."
Thomas takes a deep breath.
"Dr. Russell, I've been doing some reading the past couple of days. Popular cosmology, quantum mechanics for beginners, that sort of thing."
Russell smiles indulgently.
"I suppose it's never too late to start."
"I get the impression that a lot of the stuff that happens down at the subatomic level almost has quasi-religious overtones. Spontaneous appearance of matter, simultaneous existence in different states, almost spiritual."
"Yes, I suppose that's true, after a fashion."
"Are cosmologists a religious lot, by and large?"
"Not really."
Russell drums his fingers on his monolith.
"The field's so strange that we don't really need religious experience on top of it. Some of the Eastern religions make claims that sound vaguely quantum mechanical, but the similarities are pretty superficial."
"Nothing more, well, Christian? Nothing that would lead someone to believe in a single omniscient God who raises the dead?"
"God, no. Oh, except for that Tippler fellow."
Russell leans forward.
"Why, Jasmine Fitzgerald hasn't become a Christian, has she?"
"Murder is one thing," his tone suggests. "But this—"
"I don't think so," Thomas reassures him. "Not unless Christianity's broadened its tenets to embrace human sacrifice."
"Yes, quite."
Russell leans back again, apparently satisfied.
"Who's Tippler?" Thomas asks.
Russell blinks, momentarily distracted.
Yes. Frank Tippler, cosmologist from Tulane, claimed to have attestable mathematical proof for the existence of God, and the afterlife, too, if I recall. Raised a bit of a stir a few years back."
"I take it you weren't impressed."
Actually, I didn't follow it very closely. Theology's not that interesting to me. I mean, if physics proves that there is or there isn't a God, that's fine, but that's not really the point of the exercise, is it?
I couldn't say. Seems to me it'd be a hell of a spin-off, though.
Russell smiles.
I don't suppose you've got the reference? Thomas suggests.
Of course. Just a moment.
Russell feeds a CD to the workstation and massages the keyboard. The son purrs.
Yes, here it is. The Physics of Immortality, Modern Cosmology, God and the Resurrection of the Dead. 1994, Frank J. Tipler. I can print you out the complete citation if you want.
Please. So what was his proof?
The professor displays something akin to a very small smile.
In 30 words or less, Thomas adds, for idiots.
Well, Russell says, basically, he argued that some billions of years hence, life will incorporate itself into a massive quantum effect computing device to avoid extinction when the universe collapses.
I thought the universe wasn't going to collapse, Thomas interjects. I thought they proved it was just going to keep expanding.
That was last year, Russell says shortly. May I continue?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. As I was saying, Tipler claimed that billions of years hence, life will incorporate itself into a massive quantum effect computing device to avoid extinction when the universe collapses. An integral part of this process involves the exact reproduction of everything that ever happened in the universe up to that point, right down to the quantum level, as well as all possible variations of those events.
Beside the desk, Russell's printer extrudes a paper tongue. He pulls it free and hands it over.
So, God's a supercomputer at the end of time, and we'll all be resurrected in the mother of all simulation models?
Well,
Russell wavers. The caricature seems to cause him physical pain.
I suppose so, he finishes reluctantly. In 30 words or less, as you say.
Wow.
Suddenly Fitzgerald's ravings sound downright pedestrian.
But if he's right...
The consensus is he's not,
Russell interjects hastily.
But if the model's an exact reproduction, how could you tell the difference between real life and afterlife? I mean, what would be the point?
Well, the point is avoiding ultimate extinction, supposedly. And as to how you tell the difference...
Russell shakes his head.
Actually, I never finished the book. As I said, theology doesn't interest me all that much.
Thomas shakes his head.
I can't believe it.
Not many could, Russell says.
Then, almost apologetically, he adds,
Tipler's theoretical proofs were quite extensive, though, as I recall.
I bet. Whatever happened to him?
Russell shrugs.
What happens to anyone who's stupid enough to come up with a new way of looking at the world? They tore into him like sharks at a feeding frenzy. I don't know where he ended up.
What's wrong with this picture? Nothing. Everything. Suddenly awake, Miles Thomas stares around a darkened studio and tries to convince himself that nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The faint sounds of late-night traffic sound the same as ever. Gray parallelograms stretch across wall and ceiling, a faint luminous shadow of his bedroom window cast by some distant streetlight. Natalie's still gone from the left side of his bed, her departure so far removed by now that he doesn't even have to remind himself of it. He checks the LEDs on his bedside alarm. 2:35 a.m. Something's different. Nothing's changed. Well, maybe one thing. Tipler's Heresy sits on the nightstand, its plastic dust cover reflecting slashes of red light from the alarm clock. The Physics of Immortality, Modern Cosmology, God and the Resurrection of the Dead. It's too dark to read the lettering, but you don't forget a title like that. Miles Thomas signed it out of the library this afternoon, opened it at random. Lemma 1 and the fact that f times ij equals sigma to the infinity times k equals 1, f to the k to the ig is less than or equal to 1, we have, let's see, sigma over infinity over n equals 1 times p to the n times ij equals equals infinity over sigma over n equals 1 times n over sigma over k equals 1 times f to the k times ij times p to the n minus k times jj equals infinity over sigma over k1 times f to the k times ig, and so on for a while. Ultimately, it's less than infinity. I can't read those. My bad. Which is just E.3, and E.3 can only hold if, and threw it into his briefcase, confused and disgusted. He doesn't even know why he went to the effort of getting the fucking thing. Jasmine Fitzgerald is delusional. It's that simple. For reasons that it is not Miles Thomas's job to understand, she vivisected her husband on the kitchen floor. Now she's inventing all sorts of ways to excuse herself, to undo the undoable, and the fact that she cloaks her delusions in cosmological gobbledygook does not make them any more credible. What does he expect to do? Turn into a quantum mechanic overnight? Is he going to learn even a fraction of what he'd need to find the holes? What he'd need? Oh, geez. Is he going to learn even a fraction of what he'd need to find the holes in her carefully constructed fantasy? Why did he even bother? But he did. And now modern cosmology, God, and the resurrection of the dead looms dimly in front of him at 2:30 in the fucking morning, and something's changed. He's almost sure of it, but try as he might, he can't get a handle on what it is. He just feels different somehow. He just feels awake. That's what you feel. You couldn't get back to sleep now if your life depended on it. Miles Thomas sighs and turns on the reading lamp. Squinting as his pupils shrink against the light, he reaches out and grabs the offending book. Parts of it, astonishingly, almost make sense.
She's not here, the orderly tells him. Last night we had to move her next door. Next door? The hospital.
Why? What's wrong?
Not a clue. Convulsions, cyanosis. We thought she was toast, actually. But by the time the doctor got to her, she couldn't find anything wrong.
That doesn't make any sense.
Tell me about it. Nothing about that crazy Nothing about her makes sense. The orderly wanders off down the hall, frowning. Jasmine Fitzgerald lies between sheets tucked tight as a straitjacket, stares unblinking at the ceiling. A nurse sits to one side, boredom and curiosity mixing in equal measures on his face.
How is she? Thomas asks.
Don't really know,
The nurse says. She seems okay now.
She doesn't look okay to me. She looks almost catatonic.
She isn't. Are you, Jazz?
We're sorry, Fitzgerald says cheerfully. The person you are trying to reach is temporarily unavailable. Please leave a message and we'll get back to you.
Then,
Hi, Miles. Good to see you.
her eyes never waver from the acoustic tiles overhead.
You better blink one of these days, Thomas remarks. Your eyeballs are going to dry up.
Nothing a little judicious editing won't fix, she tells him.
Thomas glances at the nurse.
Would you excuse us for a few minutes?
Sure, I'll be in the cafe if you need me. Thomas waits until the door swings shut.
So, Jazz, what's the mass of the Higgs boson?
She blinks. She smiles. She turns to look at him.
228 GeV, she says. All right, someone actually read my thesis proposal.
Not just your proposal. That's one of Tipler's testable predictions, isn't it?
Her smile widens.
The critical one, actually. The others are pretty self-evident.
And you tested it.
Yep, over at CERN. So how'd you find this book?
I only read parts of it, Thomas admits. It was pretty tough slogging.
Sorry, my fault,
Fitzgerald says.
How so?
I thought you could use some help, so I souped you up a bit, increased your processing speed. Not enough, I guess.
Something shivers down his back. He ignores it.
I'm not
Thomas rubs his chin. He forgot to shave this morning.
exactly sure what you mean by that.
Sure you do. You just don't believe it.
Fitzgerald squirms up from between the sheets, props her back against a pillow.
It's just a semantic difference, Miles. You'd call it delusion. Us physics geeks would call it a hypothesis.
Thomas nods, uncertainly.
Oh, just say it, Miles. I know you're dying to.
Go on,
he blurts, strangely unable to stop himself.
Fitzgerald laughs. If you insist, Doctor. I figured out what I was doing wrong. I thought I had to do everything myself, and I just can't. Too many variables, you see. Even if you access them individually, there's no way you can keep track of them all at once. When I tried, I got mixed up and everything.
A sudden darkness in her face now. A memory, perhaps, pushing up through all those careful layers of contrivance.
Everything went wrong,
she finishes softly. Thomas nods, keeps his voice low and gentle.
What are you remembering right now, Jazz?
You know damn well what I'm remembering, she whispers. I cut him open.
Yes.
He was dying. He was dying. I tried to fix him. I tried to fix the code, but something went wrong and...
He waits. The silence stretches.
And I didn't know what. I couldn't fix it if I couldn't see what I'd done wrong. So I cut him open.
Her brow furrows suddenly. Thomas can't tell with what. Remembrance? Remorse?
I really overstepped myself, she says at last.
No. Concentration. She's rebuilding her defenses. She's pushing the tip of that bloody iceberg back below the surface. It can't be easy. Thomas can see it, ponderous and massively buoyant, pushing up from the depths while Jasmine Fitzgerald leans down and desperately pretends not to strain.
I know it must be difficult to think about,
Thomas says. She shrugs.
Sometimes.
Going.
When my head slips back into the old school, old habits die hard.
Going.
But I get over it.
The frown disappears. Gone.
You know when I told you about the Core Wars? She asks brightly.
After a moment, Thomas nods.
All viruses replicate, but some of the better ones can write macros. Micros, actually, would be a better name for them. To other addresses, little subroutines that autonomously perform simple tasks. And some of those can replicate too. Get my drift?
Not really, Thomas says quietly.
I really should have souped you up a bit more. Anyway, those little routines, they can handle all the bookkeeping. Each one tracks a few variables, and each time they replicate, that's a few more. And pretty soon there's no limit to the size of the problem you can handle. Hell, you could rewrite the whole damn operating system from the inside out and not have to worry about any of the details. All your little demons are doing that for you.
Are we all just viruses to you, Jazz?
She laughs at that, not unkindly.
Miles, it's a technical term, not a moral judgment. Life's information shaped by natural selection. That's all I mean.
And you've learned to rewrite the code, Thomas says.
She shakes her head.
Still learning, but I'm getting better at it all the time.
I see.
Thomas pretends to check his watch. He still doesn't know the jargon. He never will. But at least, at last, he knows where she's coming from. Nothing left but the final platitudes.
That's all I need right now, Jasmine. I want to thank you for being so cooperative. I know how tough this must be on you.
She cocks her head at him, smiling.
This is goodbye, then, Miles? You haven't come close to curing me.
He smiles back. He can almost feel each muscle fiber contracting, the increased tension on facial tendons, soft tissue stretching over bone. The utter insincerity of a purely mechanical process. That's not what I'm here for, Jazz.
Right. You're assessing my fitness.
Thomas nods.
Well, am I fit?
Sorry.
Well, she asks after a moment, am I fit?
He takes a breath.
I think you have some problems you haven't faced, but you can understand counsel, and there's no doubt you could follow any proceedings the court is likely to throw at you. Legally, that means you can stand trial.
So I'm not sane, but I'm not crazy enough to get off, eh?
I hope things work out for you.
That much, at least, is sincere.
Oh, they will, she says easily. Never fear. How much longer do I stay here?
Maybe another 3 weeks. 30 days is the usual period.
But you've finished with me. Why so long?
He shrugs. Nowhere else to put you, for now.
Oh,
she considers.
Just as well, I guess. It'll give me more time to practice.
Goodbye, Jasmine.
Too bad you missed Stuart, she says behind him. You'd have liked him. Maybe I'll bring him around to your place sometime.
The doorknob sticks. He tries again.
Something wrong? She asks.
No,
Thomas says, a bit too quickly.
it's just...
Oh, right. Hang on a sec.
She rustles in her sheets. He turns his head. Jasmine Fitzgerald lies flat on her back, unblinking, staring straight up. Her breath is fast and shallow. The doorknob seems subtly warmer in his hand. He releases it.
Are you okay?
Sure, she says to the ceiling. Just tired. Takes a bit out of you, you know.
Call the nurse, he thinks.
Really, I just need some rest.
She looks at him one last time and giggles.
But miles to go before I sleep.
Dr. Desjardins, please.
Speaking.
You performed the autopsy on Stuart McLennan?
A brief silence. Then,
Who is this?
My name's Miles Thomas. I'm a psychologist at FPSS. Jasmine Fitzgerald was a client of mine.
the phone sits there in his hand, silent.
I was looking at the case report, writing up my assessment, and I just noticed something about your findings.
They're preliminary,
Desjardins interrupts.
I'll have the full report, shortly.
Yes, I understand that, Dr. Desjardins, but my understanding is that McLennan was, well, mortally wounded.
He was gutted like a fish,
Desjardins says. Right, but your preliminary report lists the cause of death as undetermined.
That's because I haven't determined the cause of death.
Right. I guess I'm a bit confused about what else it could have been. You didn't find any toxins in the body, at least none that weren't involved in McLennan's chemo, and no other injuries except for these fistulas and teratomas.
The phone barks in Thomas's hand, a short, ugly laugh.
Do you know what a teratoma is?
Desjardins asks.
I assumed it was something to do with his cancer.
Ever hear the term primordial cyst?
No.
I hope you haven't eaten recently, Desjardins says. Every now and then you get a clump of proliferating cells floating around in the coelomic cavity.
Coelomic? Coelomic? My anatomy brain is blanking.
The coelomic cavity. Something happens to activate the dormant genes. Could be lots of things, but the upshot is you sometimes get these growing blobs of tissue sprouting teeth and hair and bone. Sometimes they get as big as grapefruits.
My God. McLennan had one of those in him?
I thought, maybe.
at first. Turned out to be a chunk of his kidney, only there was an eye growing out of it. And most of his abdominal lymph nodes, too. The ducts were clotted with hair and something like fingernail. It was keratinized, anyway.
That's horrible, Thomas whispers.
No shit. Not to mention the perforated diaphragm or the fact that half the loops of his small intestine were fused together.
But I thought he had leukemia.
He did. That wasn't what killed him.
So you're saying these teratomas might have had some role in McLennan's death?
I don't see how, Desjardins says.
But
look, maybe I'm not making myself clear. I have my doubts that Stuart McLennan died from his wife's carving skills because any one of the abnormalities I found should have killed him more or less instantly.
But that's pretty much impossible, isn't it? I mean, what did the investigating officers say?
Quite frankly, I don't think they read my report, Desjardins grumbles. Neither did you, apparently, or you would have called me before now.
Well, it wasn't really central to my assessment, Dr. Desjardins, and besides, it seemed so obvious.
For sure. You see someone laid open from crotch to sternum, you don't need any report to know what killed him. Who cares about any of this congenital abnormality bullshit?
You're saying he was born that way?
Except he couldn't have been. He'd never have even made it to his first breath.
So you're saying...
I'm saying Stuart McLennan's wife couldn't have killed him because physiologically there's no way in hell that he could have been alive to start with.
Thomas stares at the phone. It offers no retraction. But he was 28 years old. How could that be?
God only knows, Desjardins tells him. You ask me, it's a fucking miracle.
What's wrong with this picture? He isn't quite certain because he doesn't quite know what he was expecting. No opened grave, no stone rolled dramatically away from the sepulchre. Of course not. Jasmine Fitzgerald would probably say that her powers are too subtle for such obvious theater. Why leave a pile of shoveled earth, an opened coffin, when you can just rewrite the code? She sits cross-legged on her husband's undisturbed grave. Whatever powers she lays claim to, they don't shield her from the light rain falling on her head. She doesn't even have an umbrella.
Miles, she says, not looking up, I thought it might be you.
Her sunny smile, that radiant expression of happy denial, is nowhere to be seen. Her face is as expressionless as her husband's must be, 2 meters down.
Hello, Jazz, Thomas says.
How did you find me? She asks him.
FPSS went ballistic when you disappeared. They're calling everyone who had any contact with you, trying to figure out how you got out, where you might be.
Her fingers play in the fresh earth.
Did you tell them?
I didn't think of this place until after, he lies. Then, to atone, and I don't know how you got out.
Yes, you do, Miles. You do it yourself all the time.
Go on, he says, deliberately. She smiles, but it doesn't last.
We got here the same way, Miles. We copied ourselves from one address to another. The only difference is you still have to go from A to B to C. I just cut straight to Z.
I can't accept that, Thomas says.
Ever the doubter, aren't you? How can you enjoy heaven when you can't even recognize it?
Finally, she looks up at him.
You should be told the difference between empiricism and stubbornness, Doctor. Know what that's from?
He shakes his head.
Oh well, it's not important.
She looks back at the ground. Wet tendrils of hair hang across her face.
They wouldn't let me come to the funeral.
You don't seem to need permission. Sorry, you don't seem to need their permission.
Not now. That was a few days ago. I still hadn't worked all the bugs out then.
She plunges one hand into wet dirt.
You know what I did to him.
Before the knife, she means.
I don't really... You know, she says again.
Finally, he nods, although she isn't looking. The rain falls harder. Thomas shivers under his windbreaker. Fitzgerald doesn't seem to notice.
So what now?
He asks at last.
I'm not sure. It seemed so straightforward at first, you know. I loved Stuart completely, without reservation. I was going to bring him back as soon as I learned how. I was going to do it right this time. And I still love him, I really do, but damn it all, I don't love everything about him, you know. He was a slob sometimes, and I hated his taste in music. So now that I'm here, I figure, why stop at just bringing him back? Why not, well, fine-tune him a bit?
Is that what you're going to do?
I don't know. I'm going through all the things I'd change, and when it comes right down to it, maybe it'd be better to just start again from scratch. Less intensive, computationally.
I hope you are delusional.
Not a wise thing to say, but suddenly he doesn't care.
Because if you're not, God's a really callous bastard.
Is it?
She says, without much interest.
Everything's just information. We're all just subroutines interacting in a model somewhere. Well, nothing's really all that important then, is it? You'll get around to debugging Stuart one of these days. No hurry, he can wait. It's just microcode, nothing's irrevocable, so nothing really matters, does it? How could God give a shit about anything in a universe like that?
Jasmine Fitzgerald rises from the grave and wipes the dirt off her hands.
Watch it, Miles.
There's a faint smile on her face.
You don't want to piss me off.
He meets her eyes.
I'm glad I still can.
Touché.
There's still a twinkle there behind her soaked lashes and the runnels of rainwater coursing down her face.
So what are you going to do?
He asks again. She looks around the soaking graveyard.
Everything. I'm going to clean the place up. I'm going to fill in the holes. I'm going to rewrite Planck's constant so it makes sense.
She smiles at him.
Right now, though, I think I'm just going to go somewhere and think about things for a while.
She steps off the mound.
Thanks for not telling on me. It wouldn't have made any difference, but I appreciate the thought. I won't forget it.
She begins to walk away in the rain.
Jazz,
Thomas calls after her. She shakes her head without looking back.
Forget it, Miles. Nobody handed me any miracles.
She stops, then turns briefly. She stops then, turns briefly.
Besides, you're not ready. You'd probably just think I hypnotized you or something.
I should stop her, Thomas tells himself. She's dangerous. She's deluded. They could charge me with aiding and abetting. I should stop her. If I can.
She leaves him in the rain with the memory of that bright, guiltless smile. He's almost sure he doesn't feel anything pass through him then, but maybe he does. Maybe it feels like a ripple growing across some stagnant surface, a subtle reweaving of electrons, a small change in the way things are.
I'm going to clean the place up. I'm going to fill in the holes.
Miles Thomas doesn't know exactly what she meant by that, but he's afraid that soon, far too soon, there won't be anything wrong with this picture. And that was The Second Coming of Jasmine Fitzgerald by Peter Watts. Okay. Hopefully audio levels are a bit better with the new microphone this time. It's been super quiet previously. I have now adjusted that, so it should be better. If it's too loud and it's picking up too much ambient noise, then I can fiddle further. Otherwise, the audio levels I'm getting appear to be a bit better. I might bump it up a smidge more, just to be on the safe side, so I don't have to enunciate very loudly like I'm on stage. You learn to project. And the thing that's nice about microphones is you shouldn't necessarily have to. Of course, there's a whole lot of Hollywood acting that I really wish would learn from theater acting, because there's a lot of people who aren't being directed properly, in my opinion, and just mumble a lot. And it makes it very hard to understand what they're saying. in movies these days.
Back in my day, everybody enunciated like a brother trucker. You could hear every damn word. It was crystal clear. You always knew what they were saying. Now,
etc., etc. Anyway, so now we have an edgy little number called A Word for Heathens. That last one, by the way, should seem familiar to most of the people who've tuned in for some of my Gregg Egan material that I've read aloud. There's some overlap there. All right, let me bump this thing around into a different position that's a little less difficult for me to work with. Okay. Oh, wait. Now I can't fit my book around it. Whatever. Anyway, A Word for Heathens by Peter Watts. I am the hand of God. His spirit fills me even in this desecrated place. It saturates my very bones. It imbues my sword arm with the strength of 10. The cleansing flame pours from my fingertips and scours the backs of the fleeing infidels. They boil from their hole like grubs exposed by the dislodging of a rotten log. They writhe through the light, seeking only darkness. As if there could be any darkness in the sight of God. Did they actually think he would be blind to the despoiling of a place of worship? Did they think he would not notice this wretched burrow dug out beneath his very altar? Now their own blood erupts steaming from the blackened crusts of their own flesh. The sweet stink of burning meat wafts faintly through my filter. Skin peels away like bits of blackened parchment, swirling in the updrafts. One of the heathens lurches over the lip of the hole and collapses at my feet. Look past the faces, they told us on the training fields, but today that advice means nothing. This abomination has no face, just a steaming clot of seared meat puckered by a bubbling fissure near one end. The fissure splits, revealing absurdly white teeth behind. Something between a whine and a scream, barely audible over the roar of the flames. Please, maybe. Or mommy. I swing my truncheon in a glorious backhand. Teeth scatter across the room like tiny dice. Other bodies crawl about the floor of the chapel, leaving charred, bloody streaks on the floor like the slime trails of giant slugs. I don't think I've ever been so overpowered by God's presence in my life. I am Saul massacring the people of Amalek. I am Joshua butchering the Amorites. I am Asa exterminating the Ethiopians. I hold down the stud and sweep the room with great gouts of fire. I am so filled with divine love I feel ready to burst into flame myself. Praetor! Isaiah claps my shoulder from behind. His wide eyes stare back at me, distorted by the curve of his faceplate. Sir, they're dead. We need to put out the fire. For the first time in what seems like ages, I notice the rest of my guard. The prefects stand around the corners of the room as I arranged them, covering the exits, the silver foil of their uniforms writhing with fragments of reflected flame. They grip not flamethrowers, but dowsers. Part of me wonders how they could have held back. How could anyone feel the spirit in this way and not bring down the fire? But the spirit recedes in me even now, and descending from that peak I can see that God's work is all but finished here. The heathens are dead, guttering stick figures on the floor. Their refuge has been cleansed. The altar that once concealed it lies toppled on the floor where I kicked it just... Was it only a few minutes ago? It seems like forever. Sir? I nod. Isaiah gives the sign. The prefects step forward and spray the chapel with fire suppressants. The flames vanish. The light goes grey. Crumbling semi-cremated corpses erupt in clouds of wet, hissing steam as the chemicals hit. Isaiah watches me through the smoky air. It billows around us like a steam bath.
Are you all right, sir?
The sudden moisture lends a hiss to his voice. His respirator needs a new filter. I nod. The spirit was so... I'm lost for words. I've never felt it so strong before. There's a hint of a frown behind his mask.
Are you sure?
I laugh, delighted. Am I sure? I felt like Trajan himself. Isaiah looks uncomfortable, perhaps at my invocation of Trajan's name. His funeral was only yesterday, after all. Yet I meant no disrespect. If anything, I acted today in his memory. I can see him standing at God's side, looking down into this steaming abattoir and nodding with approval. Perhaps the very heathen that murdered him lies here at my feet. I can see Trajan turning to the Lord and pointing out the worm that killed him. I can hear the Lord saying, "Vengeance is mine."
An outcast huddles at the far end of the Josephus platform, leaning across the barrier in a sad attempt to bathe in the tram's maglev field. The action is both pointless and pitiful. The generators are shielded, and even if they weren't, the spirit moves in so many different ways. It never ceases to amaze me how people can fail at such simple distinctions. Shown that electromagnetic fields, precisely modulated, can connect us with the divine, they somehow conclude that any coil of wire and energy opens the door to redemption. But the fields that move chariots are not those that grace us with the rapture. Even if this misguided creature were to get his wish, even if by some perverse miracle the shielding were to vanish around the tram's coils, the best he could hope for would be nausea and disorientation. The worst, and it happens more than some would admit these days, could be outright possession. I've seen the possessed. I've dealt with the demons who inhabit them. The outcast is luckier than he knows. I step onto the tram. The spirit pushes the vehicle silently forward, tied miraculously to a ribbon of track it never touches. The platform slides past. The pariah and I lock eyes for a moment before distance disconnects us. Not shame on his face. Dull, inarticulate rage. My armor, I suppose. It was someone like me who arrested him, who denied him a merciful death and left his body lingering in the world, severed from its very soul. A pair of citizens at my side point at the dwindling figure and giggle. I glare at them. They notice my insignia, my holstered shock prod, and fall silent. I see nothing ridiculous in the outcast's desperation. Pitiful, yes. Ineffective, irrational. And yet, what would any of us do, cut off from grace? Would any straw be too thin to grasp for a chance at redemption? Everything is so utterly clear in the presence of God. The whole universe makes sense, like a child's riddle suddenly solved. You see forever. You wonder how all these glorious pieces of creation could ever have confused you. At the moment, of course, those details are lost to me. All that remains is the indescribable memory of how it felt to have understood, absolutely and perfectly. And that memory, hours old, feels more real to me than now. The tram glides smoothly into the next station. The newsfeed across the piazza replays looped imagery of Trajan's funeral. I still can't believe he's dead. Trajan was so strong in the spirit we'd begun to think him invulnerable. That he could be bested by some thing built in the backlands, it seems almost blasphemous. Yet there he rests, blessed in the eyes of God and man, a hero to both rabble and elite, a commoner who rose from prefecthood to generalship in under a decade, killed by an obscene contraption of levers and pellets and explosions of stinking gas. His peaceful face fills the feed. The physicians have hidden all signs of the thing that killed him, leaving only the marks of honorable injury for us to remember. The famous puckered line running down forehead to cheekbone, the legacy of a dagger that almost blinded him at 25, the angry mass of scars crawling up his shoulder from beneath the tunic, a lucky shock prod strike during the Essene mutiny, a crescent line on his right temple, a reminder of some other conflict whose name escapes me now, if indeed I ever knew it. The view pulls back. Trajan's face recedes into an endless crowd of mourners as the tram starts up again. I barely knew the man. I met him a few times at Senate functions, where I'm sure I made no impression at all. But he made an impression on me. He made an impression on everyone. His conviction filled the room. The moment I met him, I thought, here is a man untroubled by doubt. There was a time when I had doubts. Never about God's might or goodness, of course, only sometimes whether we were truly doing his will. I would confront the enemy and see not blasphemers but people, not traitors in waiting but children. I would recite the words of our Saviour. Did not the Christ himself say, I come not bringing peace but a sword? Did not holy Constantine baptize his troops with their sword arms raised? I knew the scriptures, I'd known them from the creche, and yet sometimes, God help me, they seemed only words, and the enemy had faces. None so blind as those who will not see. Those days are past. The Spirit has burned brighter in me over the past month than ever before, and this morning it burned brighter still, in Trajan's memory. I get off the tram at my usual stop. The platform is empty but for a pair of constables. They do not board. They approach me, their feet clicking across the tiles with the telltale disciplined rhythm of those in authority. They wear the insignia of the priesthood. I study their faces as they block my way. The memory of the Spirit fades just enough to leave room for a trickle of apprehension. "Forgive the intrusion, Praetor," one of them says, "but we must ask you to come with us."
Yes, they are sure they have the right man. No, there is no mistake. No, it cannot wait. They are sorry, but they are simply following orders from the bishop. No, they do not know what this concerns. In that, at least, they are lying. It isn't difficult to tell. Colleagues and prisoners are accorded very different treatment in this regime, and they are not treating me as a colleague. I am not shackled, at least. I am not under arrest. My presence is merely required at the temple. They have accused me of nothing. That, perhaps, is the most frustrating thing of all. Accused, I could at least deny the charges. Their cart winds through Constantinople, coasting from rail to rail with a click and a hum. I stand at the prow, forward of the control column. My escorts stand behind. Another unspoken accusation, this arrangement. I have not been ordered to keep my eyes front, but if I faced them, if I asserted the right to look back, how long would it be before a firm hand came down on my shoulder and turned me forward again? "This is not the way to the temple," I say over my shoulder. "Origin's blocked to Augustine, cleaning up after the funeral." Another lie. My own company guarded the procession down Augustine not 2 days ago. We left no obstructions. The constables probably know this. They are not trying to mislead me. They are showing me that they don't care enough to bother with a convincing lie. I turn to confront them, and am preempted before I can speak. "Right, sir, I must ask you to remove your helmet." "You're joking." "No, sir. The bishop was quite explicit." Stupefied and disbelieving, I undo the chin strap and lift the instrument from my skull. I begin to tuck it onto my arm, but the constable reaches out and takes it from me. "This is insane," I tell him. Without the helmet, I'm as blind and deaf as any heathen. I've done nothing wrong. What possible reason? The constable at the wheel turns us left onto a new track. The other puts his hand on my shoulder and firmly turns me around. Golgotha Plaza, of course. This is where the godless come to die. The loss of my helmet is moot here. No one feels the presence of the Lord in this place. Our cart slides silently past the ranks of the heretics and the demon-possessed on their crosses, their eyes rolled back in their heads, bloody rivulets trickling from the spikes hammered through their wrists. Some have probably been here since before Trajan died. Crucifixion could take days, even in the days before anesthetics, and now we are a more civilized nation. We do not permit needless suffering even among our condemned. It's an old trick, and a transparent one. Many prisoners paraded past these ranks have chosen to cooperate before interrogation even begins. Do these two think I don't see through them? Do they think I haven't done this myself more times than I can count? Some of the dying cry out as we pass, not with pain, but with the voices of the demons in their heads. Even now they preach. Even now they seek to convert others to their godless ways. No wonder the church damps this place. For what might a simple man think, feeling the divine presence while hearing sacrilege? And yet, I almost can feel God's presence. It should be impossible, even if the constables hadn't confiscated my helmet. But there it is, a trickle of the divine, like a thin, bright shaft of sunlight breaking through the roof of a storm. It doesn't overpower. God's presence does not flood through me as it did earlier. But there is comfort nonetheless. He is everywhere. He is even here. We do not banish him with damper fields any more than we turn off the sun by closing a window. God is telling me, have strength. I am with you. My fear recedes like an ebbing tide. I turn back to my escorts and smile. God is with them too, if they'd only realize it. But I don't believe they do. Something changes in their faces when they look at me. The last time I turned to face them, they were merely grim and uncooperative. Now, for some reason, they almost look afraid.
They take me to the temple, but not to the bishop. They send me through the tunnel of light instead. They tell me it is entirely routine, although I went through the tunnel only 4 months ago and am not due again for another 8. My armor is not returned to me afterwards. Instead, they escort me to the bishop's sanctum, through an ornate doorway embellished with the likeness of a fiery cross and God's commandment to Constantine, In hex signo vinces, in this sign conquer. They leave me alone, but I know the procedure. There are guards outside. The sanctum is dark and comforting, all cushions and velvet drapes and mahogany bones. There are no windows. A screen on one wall glows with a succession of volumetric images. Each lingers for a few moments before dissolving hypnotically into the next. The Sinai foothills, Prolinius leading the charge against the Hindus, the holy grotto itself, where God showed Moses the burning bush, where he showed all of us the way of the Spirit. Imagine that we had never found it. I turn to find the bishop standing behind me as if freshly materialized. He holds a large envelope the color of ivory. He watches me with the faintest trace of a smile on his lips. Teacher, I say, imagine that Constantine never had his vision, that Eusebius never sent his expedition into Sinai. Imagine that the grotto had never been rediscovered after Moses. No 1,000-year legacy, no technological renaissance. Just another unprovable legend about a prophet hallucinating in the mountains, and 10 commandments handed down with no tools to enforce them. We'd be no better than the heathens. He gestures me towards a settee, a decadent thing, overstuffed and wine-coloured. I do not wish to sit, but neither do I wish to give offence. I perch carefully on one edge. The bishop remains standing. I've been there, you know, he continues, in the very heart of the grotto, kneeling in the very place Moses himself must have knelt. He's waiting for a response. I clear my throat. It must have been indescribable.
Not really, he shrugs. You probably feel closer to God during your morning devotionals. It's unrefined, after all. Raw ore. Astounding enough that a natural formation could induce any kind of religious response, much less one consistent enough to base a culture on. Still, the effect is weaker than you might expect. Overrated.
I swallow and hold my tongue.
Of course, you could say the same thing about the religious experience in principle,
He continues, blandly sacrilegious.
just an electric hiccough in the temporal lobe, no more divine than the force that turns compass needles and draws iron filings to a magnet.
I remember the first time I heard such words with the rest of my creche just before our first communion.
It's like a magic trick, they said. Like static interfering with a radio. It confuses the part of your brain that keeps track of your edges, of where you stop and everything else begins. And when that part gets confused, it thinks you go on forever, that you and creation are one. It tricks you into believing that you're in the very presence of God.
They showed us a picture of the brain sitting like a great wrinkled prune within the shadowy outline of a human head, arrows and labels drawing our attention to the relevant parts. They opened up wands and prayer caps to reveal the tiny magnets and solenoids inside, all the subtle instrumentality that had subverted an entire race. Not all of us got it at first. When you're a child, electromagnet is just another word for miracle. But they were patient, repeating the essentials in words simple enough for young minds, until we'd all grasped the essential point. We were but soft machines, and God was a malfunction. And then they put the prayer caps on our heads and opened us to the Spirit, and we knew, beyond any doubting, that God was real. The experience transcended debate, transcended logic. There was no room for argument. We knew. Everything else was just words.
Remember, they said afterwards, when the heathens would tell you our God is a lie, remember this moment.
I cannot believe that the bishop is playing the same games with me now. If he is joking, it is in very bad taste. If he is testing my conviction, he falls laughably short. Neither alternative explains my presence here. But he won't take my silence for an answer.
Don't you agree?
He presses. I tread carefully. I was taught that the spirit lives within iron filings and compass needles as much as in our minds and our hearts. That makes it no less divine. I take a breath. I mean no disrespect, teacher, but why am I here? He glances at the envelope in his hand.
I wish to discuss your recent exemplary performance.
I wait, not taken in. My guards did not treat me as an exemplary performer.
You, he continues, are why we prevail against the heathens. It's not just the technology that the Spirit provides, it's the certainty. We know our God. He is empirical. He can be tested and proven and experienced. We have no doubt. You have no doubt. That is why we have been unstoppable for 1,000 years. That is why neither backland spies nor heathen flying machines nor the very breadth of an ocean will keep us from victory.
They are not words that need corroboration.
Imagine what it must be like to have to believe.
The bishop shakes his head almost sadly.
Imagine the doubt, the uncertainty, the discord and petty strife over which dreams are divine and which are blasphemous. Sometimes I almost pity the heathens. What a terrible thing it must be to need faith. And yet they cling to it. They creep into our towns, and they wear our clothes, and they move among us, and they shield themselves from the very presence of God. He sighs. I confess I do not entirely understand them.
They ingest some form of herb or fungus, I tell him. They claim it connects them with their own God.
The bishop pause.
Doubtless he knew this already.
I would like to see their fungus move a monorail, or even turn a compass needle, and yet, surrounded by evidence of the Lord's hand, they continue to cut themselves off from it. This is not widely known, but we've received reports that they can successfully scramble entire rooms, whole villas, even.
He runs one long fingernail again along the envelope, slitting it lengthwise.
Like the chapel you purged this morning, Praetor. It was scrambled. The spirit could not manifest.
I shake my head. You are mistaken, teacher. I've never felt the spirit more strongly than the grim-faced escorts, the detour through Golgotha, the shaft of inexplicable sunlight. Everything falls into place. A yawning chasm opens in the pit of my stomach. The bishop extracts a sheet of film from the envelope, a snapshot of my passage through the tunnel of light.
You are possessed, he says.
No, there is some mistake. He holds up the snapshot, a ghostly translucent image of my head, rendered in greys and greens. I can see the demon clearly. It festers within my skull, a malign little lump of darkness just above my right ear, a perfect spot from which to whisper lies and treachery. I am unarmed. I am imprisoned. I will not leave this place a free man. There are guards beyond the door, and unseen priest-holes hidden in the dark corners of the room. If I so much as raise a hand to the bishop, I am dead. I am dead anyway. I am possessed. No, I whisper.
I am the way, the truth, and the light, the bishop intones. None can come to the Father except through me.
He stabs at the lump on the plate with one accusing finger.
Is this of the Christ? Is it of his church? How then can it be real?
I shake my head dumbly. I cannot believe this is happening. I cannot believe what I see. I felt the spirit today. I felt it. I am as certain of that as I have been of anything. Is it me thinking these thoughts? Is it the demon whispering to me?
It seems there are more of them every day, the bishop remarks sadly, and they are not content to corrupt the soul. They kill the body as well.
They force the church to kill the body, he means. The church is going to kill me. But the bishop shakes his head as though reading my mind.
I speak literally, Praetor. The demon will take your life. Not immediately. It may seduce you with this false rapture for some time, but then you will feel pain, and your mind will go. You will change. Not even your loved ones will recognize you by your act. Perhaps, near the end, you will become a drooling infant, squalling and soiling yourself. Or perhaps the pain will simply grow unbearable. Either way, you will die.
How long?
A few days, a few weeks. I know of one poor soul who was ridden for nearly a year before she was saved.
Saved, like the heretics at Golgotha.
And yet, whispers a tiny inner voice, even a few days spent in that presence would easily be worth a lifetime.
I bring my hand to my temple. The demon lurks in there, festering in wet darkness only a skull's thickness away. I stare at the floor. It can't be.
It is, but it does not have to be.
It takes me a moment to realize what he's just said. I look up and meet his eyes. He's smiling.
There is another way, he says. Yes, usually the body must die that the soul can be saved. Crucifixion is infinitely kinder than the fate that usually awaits the possessed. But there's an alternative for those with potential. I will not mislead you, Praetor. There are risks, but there have been successes as well.
An alternative?
We may be able to exorcise the demon. We may be able to remove it, physically, from your head. If it works, we can both save your life and return you to the Lord's presence.
If it works.
You are a soldier. You know that death is always a possibility. It is a risk here, as in all things.
He takes a deep, considered breath.
On the cross, death would be a certainty.
The demon in my head does not argue. It whispers no blasphemies, makes no desperate plea against the prospect of its extraction. It merely opens the door to heaven a crack, and bathes my soul in a sliver of the divine. It shows me the truth. I know, as I knew in the creche, as I knew this morning, I am in the presence of God, and if the bishop cannot see it, then the bishop is a babbling charlatan or worse. I would gladly go to the cross for just such a moment as this. I smile and shake my head. Do you think me blind, Bishop? You would wrap your wretched plottings up in Scripture, that I would not see them for what they are? And I do see them now, laid bare on the Spirit's radiance, in the Spirit's radiance. Of course these vile Pharisees would trap the Lord in trinkets and talismans if they could. They would ration God through a spigot to which only they have access, and those to whom he would speak without their consent they would brand possessed. And I am possessed, but not by any demon. I am possessed by Almighty God, and neither he nor his sons are hermit crabs, driven to take up residence in the shells of idols and machinery. Tell me, Bishop, I cry, was Saul wearing one of your prayer caps on the road to Damascus? Did Elisha summon his bears with one of your wands? Or were they possessed of demons as well? He shakes his head, feigning sadness. It is not the prater that speaks. He's right. God speaks through me, as he spoke through the prophets of old. I am God's voice, and it doesn't matter that I am unarmed and unarmored. It doesn't matter that I am deep in the devil's sanctum. I need only raise my hand, and God will strike this blasphemer down. I raise my fist. I am 50 cubits high. The bishop stands before me, an insect unaware of its own insignificance. He has one of his ridiculous machines in one hand. Down, devil! We both cry, and there is blackness.
I awaken into bondage. Broad straps hold me against the bed. The left side of my face is on fire. Smiling physicians lean into view and tell me all is well. Someone holds up a mirror. My head has been shaved on the right side. A bleeding crescent, inexplicably familiar, cuts across my temple. Crosses of black thread sew my flesh together as though I were some torn garment, clumsily repaired. The exorcism was successful, they say. I will be back with my company within the month. The restraints are merely a precaution. I will be free of them soon, as I am free of the demon. Bring me to God, I croak. My throat burns like a desert. They hold a prayer wand to my head. I feel nothing. I feel nothing. The wand is in working order. The batteries are fully charged. It's probably nothing, they say. A temporary after-effect of the exorcism. Give it time. Probably best to leave the restraints for the moment, but there's nothing to worry about. Of course, they are right. I have dwelt in the Spirit. I know the mind of the Almighty. After all, were not all of we chosen, made in his image? God would never abandon even the least of his flock. I do not have to believe this. It is something I know. Father, you will not forsake me. It will come back. It will come back. They urge me to be patient. After 3 days, they admit that they've seen this before. Not often, mind you. It was a rare procedure, and this is an even rarer occurrence. But it's possible that the demon may have injured the part of the mind that lets us truly know God. The physicians recite medical terms which mean nothing to me. I ask them about the others that preceded me down this path, how long before they were restored to God's sight. But it seems there are no hard and fast rules, no overall patterns. Trajan burns on the wall beside my bed. Trajan burns daily there and is never consumed, a little like the burning bush itself. My keepers have been replaying his cremation daily, a thin gruel of recorded images thrown against the wall. I suspect they are meant to be inspirational. It is always just past sundown in these replays. Trajan's fiery passing returns a kind of daylight to the piazza, an orange glow reflecting in 10,000 upturned faces. He is with God now, forever in his presence. Some say that was true even before he passed, that Trajan lived his whole life in the spirit. I don't know whether that's true. Maybe people just couldn't explain his zeal and devotion any other way. A whole lifetime in the presence of God. I'd give a lifetime now for even a minute.
We are in unexplored territory, they say. That is where they are, perhaps. I am in hell. Finally, they admit it. None of the others have recovered. They have been lying to me all along. I have been cast into darkness. I am cut off from God. And they call this butchery a success.
It will be a test of your faith.
They tell me. My faith! I gape like a fish at the word. It is a word for heathens, for people with made-up gods. The cross would have been infinitely preferable. I would kill these smug meat-cutters with my bare hands, if my bare hands were free. Kill me, I beg. They refuse. The bishop himself has commanded that I be kept alive and in good health. Then summon the bishop, I tell them. Let me talk to him, please. They smile sadly and shake their heads. One does not summon the bishop. More lies, perhaps. Maybe the bishop has forgotten that I even exist. Maybe these people just enjoy watching the innocent suffer. Who else, after all, would dedicate their lives to potions and bloodletting? The cut in my head keeps me awake at night, itches maddeningly as scar tissue builds and puckers along its curved edges. I still can't remember where I've seen its like before. I curse the bishop. He told me there would be risks, but he only mentioned death. Death is not a risk to me here. It is an aspiration.
I refuse food for 4 days. They force-feed me liquids through a tube in my nose. It's a strange paradox. There is no hope here. I will never again know God. I am denied even surcease. And yet these butchers, by the very act of refusing me a merciful death, have somehow awakened a tiny spark that wants to live. It is their sin I am suffering for, after all. This darkness is of their making. I did not turn away from God. They hacked God out of me like a gobbet of gangrenous flesh. It can't be that they want me to live, for there is no living apart from God. It can only be that they want me to suffer. And with this realization comes a sudden desire to deny them that satisfaction. They will not let me die. Perhaps soon they will wish they had. God damn them. God damn them. Of course. I've been a fool. I've forgotten what really matters. I've been so obsessed by these petty torments that I've lost sight of one simple truth. God does not turn on his children. God does not abandon his own. But test them? Yes. God tests us all the time. Did he not strip Job of all his worldly goods and leave him picking his boils in the dust? Did he not tell Abraham to kill his own son? Did he not restore them to his sight once they had proven worthy of it? I believe that God rewards the righteous. I believe that the Christ said, "Blessed are those who believe even though they have not seen." And now, at last, I believe that perhaps faith is not the obscenity I once thought, for it can give strength when one is cut off from the truth. I am not abandoned. I am tested. I send for the bishop. Somehow, this time I know he'll come. He does. They say I've lost the spirit, I tell him. They are wrong. He sees something in my face. Something changes in his. Moses was denied the promised land, I continue. Constantine saw the flaming cross but twice in his lifetime. God spoke to Saul of Tarsus only once. Did they lose faith? They moved the world, the bishop says. I bare my teeth. My conviction fills the room. So will I. He smiles gently. I believe you. I stare at him, astonished by my own blindness. You knew this would happen. He shakes his head. I could only hope. But yes, there is a strange truth we are only learning now. I'm still not sure I believe it myself. Sometimes it isn't the experience of redemption that makes the greatest champions, but the longing for it. On the panel beside me, Trajan burns and is not consumed. I wonder briefly if my fall from grace was entirely accidental. But in the end it does not matter. I remember at last where I once saw a scar like mine. Before today, the acts I committed in God's name were pale, bloodless things. No longer. I will return to the kingdom of heaven. I will raise my sword arm high, and I will not lay it down until the last of the unbelievers has been slaughtered. I will build mountains of flesh in his name. Rivers will flow from the throats that I cut. I will not stop until I have earned my way back into his sight. The bishop leans forward and loosens my straps. I don't think we need these anymore. They couldn't hold me anyway. I could tear them like paper. I am the fist of God. Don't drop it. No! Yes, I did not drop it. Let's see. What time is it? I could do one more. Oh yeah, this one's short.
Hokey pokey.
So this next one is Home, also by Peter Watts, as you might expect, given it's a Peter Watts short story collection. Come on. Home, by Peter Watts. It has forgotten what it was. Not that that matters down here. What good is a name when there's nothing around to use it? This one doesn't remember where it came from. It doesn't remember the murky twilight of the North Pacific Drift, or the noise and gasoline aftertaste that drove it back below the thermocline. It doesn't remember the gelatinous veneer of language and culture that once sat atop its spinal cord. It doesn't even remember the long, slow dissolution that overlord into dozens of autonomous, squabbling subroutines. Oh. It doesn't even remember the long, slow dissolution of that overlord into dozens of autonomous, squabbling subroutines. Now, even those have fallen silent. Oh, this is the bit that's, I think I've read this one before already. Hell with it, we'll do it anyway. This one is adjacent to a spin-off from Starfish. Where were we? Now even those have fallen silent. Not much comes down from the cortex anymore. Low-level impulses flicker in from the parietal and occipital lobes. The motor strip hums in the background. Occasionally, Broca's area mutters to itself. The rest is mostly dead and dark, worn smooth by a sluggish black ocean cold as antifreeze. All that's left is pure reptile. It pushes on, blind and unthinking, oblivious to the weight of 400 liquid atmospheres. It eats whatever it can find. Desalinators and recyclers keep it hydrated. Sometimes old mammalian skin grows sticky with secreted residues. Newer skin, laid on top, opens pores to the ocean and washes everything clean with aliquots of distilled seawater. The reptile never wonders about the signal in its head that keeps it pointing the right way. It doesn't know where it's headed or why. It only knows, with pure brute instinct, how to get there. It's dying, of course, but slowly. It wouldn't care much about that even if it knew. Now something is tapping on its insides. Infinitesimal, precisely spaced shockwaves are marching in from somewhere ahead and drumming against the machinery in its chest. The reptile doesn't recognize the sound. It's not the intermittent grumble of conshelf and seabed pushing against each other. It's not the low-frequency ATOC pulses that echo dimly past en route to the bearing. It's a pinging noise. Metallic, Broca's area murmurs, although it doesn't know what that means. Abruptly, the sound intensifies. The reptile is blinded by sudden starbursts. It tries to blink, a vestigial act from a time it doesn't remember. The caps on its eyes darken automatically. The pupils beneath, hamstrung by the speed of reflex, squeeze to pinpoints a few seconds later. A copper beacon glares out from the darkness ahead. Too coarse, too steady, far brighter than the bioluminescent embers that sometimes light the way. Those, at least, are dim enough to see by. The reptile's augmented eyes can boost even the faint twinkle of deep-water fish and turn it into something resembling twilight. But this new light turns the rest of the world stark black. Light is never this bright, not since... From the cortex, a shiver of recognition. It floats motionless, hesitating. It's almost aware of faint, urgent voices from somewhere nearby, but it's been following the same course for as long as it can remember, and that course points only one way. It sinks to the bottom, stirring a muddy cloud as it touches down. It crawls forward along the ocean floor. The beacon shines down from several meters above the seabed. At closer range, it resolves into a string of smaller lights stretched in an arc, like photophores on the flank of some enormous fish. Broca sends down more noise. Sodium floods. The reptile burrows on through the water, panning its face from side to side. And freezes, suddenly fearful. Something huge looms behind the lights, bloating gray against black. It hangs above the seabed like a great, smooth boulder, impossibly buoyant, encircled by lights at its equator. Striated filaments connect it to the bottom. Something else changes. It takes a moment for the reptile to realize what's happened. The drumming against its chest has stopped. It glances nervously from shadow to light, light to shadow. You are approaching Linky Station, Aleutian Geothermal Array. We're glad you've come back. The reptile shoots back into the darkness, mud billowing behind it. It retreats a good 20 meters before a dim realization sinks in. Broca's area knows those sounds. It doesn't understand them. Broca's never much good at anything but mimicry, but it has heard something like them before. The reptile feels an unaccustomed twitch. It's been a long time since curiosity was any use. It turns and faces back from where it fled. Distance has smeared the lights into a diffuse, dull glow. A faint staccato rhythm vibrates in its chest. The reptile edges back towards the beacon. One light divides again into many. That dim, ominous outline still lurks behind them. Once more, the rhythm falls silent at the reptile's approach. The strange object looms overhead in its girdle of light. It's smooth in some places, pockmarked in others. Precise rows of circular bumps, sharp-angled protuberances appear at closer range. You are approaching Linky Station, Aleutian Geothermal Array. We're glad you've come back. The reptile flinches, but stays on course this time. We can't get a definite ID from your sonar profile. The sound fills the ocean. You might be Deborah Linden. Deborah Linden. Please respond if you are Deborah Linden. Deborah Linden. That brings memory. Something with 4 familiar limbs, but standing upright, moving against gravity and bright light and making strange, harsh sounds. Laughter. Please respond. It shakes its head, not knowing why. If you are Deborah Linden. Judy Carrico, says something else, very close. Deborah Linden, if you can't speak, please wave your arms. The lights overhead cast a bright scalloped circle on the ocean floor. There on the mud rests a box, large enough to crawl into. 2 green pinpoints sparkle from a panel on one of its sides. Please enter the emergency shelter beneath the station. It contains food and medical facilities. One end of the box gapes open. Delicate, jointed things can be seen folded up inside, hiding in shadow. Everything is automatic. Enter the shelter and you'll be all right. A rescue team is on the way. Automatic. That noise, too, sticks out from the others. Automatic almost means something. It has personal relevance. The reptile looks back up at the thing that's hanging overhead like a fist. Like a fist. The underside of the sphere is a cool, shadowy refuge. The equatorial lights can't reach all the way around its convex surface. In the overlapping shadows on the South Pole, something shimmers enticingly. The reptile pushes up off the bottom, raising another cloud. Deborah Linden, the station is locked for your own protection. It glides into the cone of shadow beneath the object and sees a bright, shiny disk a meter across, facing down, held inside a circular rim. The reptile looks up into it. Something looks back. Startled, the reptile twists down and away. The disk writhes in the sudden turbulence. A bubble. That's all it is. A pocket of gas trapped underneath the airlock. The reptile stops. It knows that word. It even understands it, somehow. Broca's is not alone anymore. Something else is reaching out from the temporal lobe and tapping in. Something up there actually knows what Broca is talking about. Please enter the emergency shelter beneath the station. Still nervous, the reptile returns to the airlock. The air pocket shines silver in the reflected light. A black wraith moves into view within it, almost featureless except for 2 empty white spaces where eyes should be. It reaches out to meet the reptile's outstretched hand. 2 sets of fingertips touch, fuse, disappear. One arm is grafted onto its own reflection at the wrist. Fingers, on the other side of the looking glass, touch metal. Locked for your own protection, Deborah Linden. It pulls back its hand, fascinated. Inside, forgotten parts are stirring. Other parts, more familiar, try to send them away. The wraith floats overhead, empty and untroubled. It draws its hand to its face, runs an index finger from one ear to the tip of the jaw. A very long molecule, folded against itself, unzips. The wraith's smooth black face splits open a few centimeters. What's underneath shows pale gray in the filtered light. The reptile feels the familiar dimpling of its cheek in sudden cold. It continues the motion, slashing its face from ear to ear. A great smiling gash opens below the eye spots. Unzipped, a flap of black membrane floats under its chin, anchored at the throat. There's a pucker in the center of the skinned area. The reptile moves its jaw. The pucker opens. By now, most of its teeth are gone. It swallowed some, spat others out if they came loose when its face was unsealed. No matter. Most of the things it eats these days are even softer than it is. When the occasional mollusk or echinoderm proves too tough or too large to swallow whole, there are always hands. Thumbs still oppose. But this is the first time it's actually seen that gaping, toothless ruin where a mouth used to be. It knows this isn't right, somehow. Everything is automatic. A sudden muffled buzz cuts into the noise, then fades. Welcome silence returns for a moment. Then different sounds, quieter than before, almost hushed.
Christ, Judy, is that you?
It knows that sound.
Judy Carrico? It's Jeanette Ballard. Remember? We went through prelim together. Judy, can you speak?
The sound comes from a long time ago.
Can you hear me, Judy? Wave if you can hear me.
Back when this one was part of something larger, not an it at all then, but...
The machine didn't recognize you, you know. It was only programmed for locals.
She... Clusters of neurons, long dormant, sparkle in the darkness. Old, forgotten subsystems stutter and reboot.
You've come... My God, Judy, do you know where you are? You went missing off Juan de Fuca. You've come over 3,000 kilometers.
It knows my name. She can barely think over the sudden murmuring in her head.
Judy, it's me, Jeanette. God, Judy, how did you last this long?
She can't answer. She's just barely starting to understand the question. There are parts of her still asleep, parts that won't talk, still other parts completely washed away. She doesn't remember why she never gets thirsty. She's forgotten the tidal rush of human breath. Once, for a little while, she knew words like photoamplification and myoelectric. They were nonsense to her even then. She shakes her head, trying to clear it. The new parts, no, the old parts, the very old parts that went away and now they've come back and won't shut the fuck up, are all clamoring for attention. She reaches into the bubble again, past her own reflection. Once again, the ventral airlock pushes back.
Judy, you can't get into the station. No one's there. Everything's automated now.
She brings her hand back to her face, tugs at the line between black and gray. More shadow peels back from the wraith, leaving a large pale oval with two smaller ovals, white and utterly featureless, inside. The flesh around her mouth is going prickly and numb.
My face! Something screams. What happened to my eyes? You don't want to go inside anyway. You couldn't even stand up. We've seen it in some of the other runaways. You lose your calcium after a while. Your bones go all punky, you know. My eyes. We're airlifting a scaife out to you. We'll have a team down there in 15 hours tops. Just go down into the shelter and wait for them. It's state-of-the-art, Judy. It'll take care of everything.
She looks down into the open box. Words appear in her head. Leg, hold, trap. She knows what they mean.
They made some mistakes, Judy, but things are different now. We don't have to change people anymore. You just wait there, Judy. We'll put you back to rights. We'll bring you home.
The voices inside grow quiet, suddenly attentive. They don't like the sound of that word. Home. She wonders what it means. She wonders why it makes her feel so cold. More words scroll through her mind.
The lights are on. Nobody's home.
The lights come on, flickering. She can catch glimpses of sick, rotten things squirming in her head. Old memories grind screeching against years of corrosion. Something lurches into sudden focus. Worms, clusters of twitching, eyeless, pulpy snouts, reaching out for her across the space of 2 decades. She stares, horrified, and remembers what the worms were called. They were called fingers. Something gives way with a snap. There's a big room and a hand puppet clenched in one small fist. Something smells like mints, and worms are surging up between her legs, and they hurt, and they're whispering, "Shh, it's not really that bad, is it?" And it is, but she doesn't want to let him down. "After all I've done for you." So she shakes her head and squeezes her eyes shut and just waits. It's years and years before she opens her eyes again, and when she does, he's back. So much smaller now. He doesn't remember. He doesn't even fucking remember. It's all, "My dear, how you've grown. How long has it been?" So she tells him as the taser wires hit and he goes over. She tells him as his muscles lock tight in a 12,000-volt orgasm. She shows him the blade, shows him up real close. and his left eye deflates with a wet, tired sigh, but she leaves the other one, jiggling hilariously in frantic little arcs, so he can watch, but shit for once, there really is a cop around when you need one, and here come the worms again, a hard-clenched knot of them driving into her kidney like a piston, worms grabbing her hair, and they take her not to the nearest precinct, but to some strange clinic, where voices in the next room murmur about optimal post-traumatic environments and endogenous dopamine addiction. And then someone says, there's an alternative, Miss Caraco, a place you could go that's a little bit dangerous, but then you'd be right at home there, wouldn't you? And you could make a real contribution. We need people who can live under a certain kind of stress without going, you know. And she says, okay, just fucking do it. And the worms burrow into her chest, devour her soft parts, and replace them with hard-edged geometries of plastic and metal that cut her insides. And then dark cold, life without breath, 4,000 meters of black water pressing down like a massive sheltering womb. Judy, will you just for God's sake talk to me? Is your vocoder broken? Can't you answer? Her whole body is shaking. She can't do anything except watch her hand rise, an autonomous savior, to take the black skin floating around her face. The reptile presses edges together, here and here. Hydrophobic side chains embrace. A slippery black caul stitches itself back together over rotten flesh. Muffled voices rage faintly inside. Judy, please just wave or something. Judy, where are you going? It doesn't know. All it's ever done is travel to this place. It's forgotten why. Judy, you can't wander too far away. Don't you remember? Our instruments can't see very well this close to an active rift. All it wants is to get away from the noise and the light. All it wants is to be alone again. Judy, wait! We just want to help! The harsh, artificial glare fades behind it. Ahead, there is only the sparse twinkle of living flashlights. A faint realization teeters on the edge of awareness and washes away forever. She knew this was home years before she ever saw an ocean. And that is where we will call it for this week. As we put our paces through this microphone, or switch that, reverse it. Hopefully the volume levels on the new mic are a bit better now, and not as muted and quiet as before. Hopefully background noise isn't too bad either. Anyway, with that, I'll leave you all. We will continue this next week. There are good odds I won't be here Friday. Let me just double check my calendar here. Good odds I won't be here next Friday, but Monday and Wednesday should be a lock. Should be a non-issue. And we hopefully will finish this book in that time. We'll find out. Anyway, Yup, that's it for me. Stay safe, stay sane, be decent to each other. See you all next time.